Now, there are 3 keys that I want to share with you that are so important for all of us to accelerate our success. Now, keep in mind, when I talk about success, I don't define it like everybody else. I'm not talking about cars and houses and bank accounts. I'm not talking about that. There's a lot of people with all of that, and they're not happy. There's a lot of people with all of that, and they committed suicide. And so we must look deeper, and we'll talk about that momentarily, but there's 3 keys that I want to really share with you that are really important. Number 1, we have to have an environment for success. We have to have an environment for success. We'll talk about that. Number 2, we have to consistently raise our success IQ. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And what is our success IQ? And then thirdly, we have to learn from successful people. So, anyone that tells you they have nothing to learn, they only are a teacher, they're not a student, they have nothing to gain, they can't be added to, is a dangerous person. And so everyone, all of us here today as one human family, we have to understand that we all can learn from others. And that's why, again, in all that I've accomplished, I'm always still listening. I'm always wanting to grow. And that's what we all have to be willing to do. All right. So let's talk about environment. I just want to say, very plainly, environment matters. It matters who you're around. It matters what type of people you listen to. It matters who you allow to advise you. It matters where you go, what you do, what you listen to. It matters because environment is so crucial to shaping who we are and who we will become. A lot of times, people often say, if you want to see who someone is, study their friends, study what's around them, study where they go, because environment says a lot about who we are. So we have to manage that environment. Environment is something that has the ability, and it creates a soil for the seeds that you have to either grow one way or grow another way. So we know this is critical. So think about this for a minute. I want you to think about this equation. The first thing that we do is we think. We think that drives how we feel. This is why thinking is so important, because it drives how we feel. Why do you feel that way? Because of what you're thinking about. How we feel drives what we do. And it's what we do that determines how successful we will be. So when you consider that, I want you to notice something. I said we start with a thought, but that's really not true. We really start with the environment that we're in that helps me to generate those thoughts. And I can be an environment in my mind, in my household, at my job, with my social dynamic. There's many different environments that we are impacted by, and all of them generate a set of thoughts. And that's why sometimes when people try to do better, they try to do more, they get out, they do this, they do that, and they wonder why they always go back to the same problem, go back to the same habit, they go back to the same challenge, because they go to that, great motivational talk, and they read that good book, and they watch that great YouTube video, and they go back to the environment that generates the same thoughts, which generate the same feelings, which generate the same actions, which lead you to the same place. And this is why environment is so important. Now, because of that, one thing that I'm so happy about, one of my greatest creations, and I am definitely telling you about this, I love mentioning, because I created an environment called Uplift, where people can go and, they can just immerse in positive thinking, positive environment, success-minded individuals, no foolishness, no trolling, no political stuff. Let's focus on uplifting ourselves and getting our mind in the right place. And I'll talk more about mind fitness later, but my point is, even our social environments, we have to consider, what are they doing to us? How do they impact us? And how do they shape our thinking every day? More on this later. All right. Now, I want you to look at this puzzle here, and I want you to understand a few things. This puzzle is basically showing all the things that we might go to for, to help us, to make us better. Coaches, books, apps, mentors, social media, speakers, programs, right? There's all these different things. And we really want, if you're a person that cares about yourself and your future, you should be looking for things to help you be better. But the missing puzzle piece is none of those things. The missing puzzle piece is you. And I want you to consider that because oftentimes, before we can even benefit from anything else, we've got to deal with the you. I've got to deal with the me. And this is what we're talking about when we say you are a CEO, you run the business of you. And this is, again, what is so critical to understand. We make executive decisions every single day. And we truly are the CEO of ourselves. And so this is important to understand the battle that we're in. Now, speaking of that, did you know that you are single-handedly the biggest limitation to your own success? And we just have to be real here. I have to understand that I am the single-handedly biggest limitation to my success. How I think, what I dwell on, where my mind is, how I perceive things, how I handle challenge, how I handle opposition, how I deal with life, right? How I respond to what's in front of me. That is the biggest limitation, the biggest opportunity at the same time. So we all have a mini me on the inside, something that's always telling us and reminding us of the things that we should be afraid of, the things that we should protect ourselves from, the things that we should run away from, right? And we have to be careful at how does that voice impact us? How does us impact us? We have to think deeply about that. So this is what we mean when we're talking about this battle. Now, as this says here, it truly is a battle, a war. It's a battle that is every single day taking place between your two ears. Who are you, right? And who you've been is at war with who you want to become. And we have to realize that because if you don't even know you're in a war, how can you win that war? So think about it. One of the most devastating wars we ever seen was Vietnam because many times they didn't know who the enemy was. They didn't know who they were fighting. They didn't know how to find the enemy clearly. And this is why so many people were lost. And so you don't want a Vietnam experience in your own life. You have to know what you're fighting. You have to know what has shaped you. You have to know what you're up against. And so this warfare is very important. So this is why we say it's you versus you, right? The you that has been shaped by the past, by childhood, by life experiences, and the you that you want to become. The you that you are striving for, the you that has goals and dreams and wants to be better in every aspect of life. And so we have to understand this, and that's why we have to be around the right people with the right knowledge and with the right tools to fight this fight. Very important. Okay. So now I want to tell you a little bit about success IQ. What is your success IQ? Now, many of you have heard IQ, which means intelligence quotient. It's normally how we measure someone's intelligence, their level of knowledge, their level of aptitude to understand things, right? And then there's success, and we've all heard of success. Now, so this is saying your intelligence quotient for success. So here's how we define that at URCO. And this is something created and developed by URCO for all of us to benefit from. So here's the key. And I want you to get a good look at that and read that closely. The level of knowledge we have about the limits to our success based on how we think in, here's the key, different situations. You could have a high success IQ when it comes to one area of your life, and have a low success IQ in another area of your life. So we got, again, let me read that to you again. The level of knowledge we have about the limits to our success based on how we think in different situations. Very, very important. Now, let's go deeper into success IQ. So, I want to introduce you to 4 villains, 4 enemies, 4 opposing characters that are in our life. And every time we try to build a wall of protection, every time we try to build a wall of defense and keep our life going in the right way, these 4 villains, they bust through that wall and tear it down. Now, let me look at you for a minute before I go into this. I want to see you here. I can't say enough about these 4 villains, and we all have them. And I want everyone here to take this very seriously, because at the end of the day, if we don't understand those 4 villains, if we don't understand how they impact us, we won't understand how those things can limit our ability to begin to be the best person that we want to be, or succeed in the areas that we want to succeed. Now, I want to now go into each of these, and I'm going to talk about them briefly. So when we talk about these 4 villains, right? So self-ignorance is a big one. So self-ignorance has to do with our ignorance of how we've been shaped by life. We're not able to understand the areas that we might have, gray areas that we don't actually see. We have blind spots, just like someone who's driving, right? So we have to be aware of the areas we might be self-ignorant. Another area is insecurities. We all have them. And I like to call it outsecurities, because really it's always us looking for someone outside of us to validate us, right? And we have to begin to find out what is that that's causing that. We have to be able to step away from that. Now, another key area is fear. Now, we know what fear is. Fear is a very real emotion that can paralyze if it's, if you allow it to. And so fear is something that can stop us and hinder us. And listen, fear is not just one just one block. It shows up in different ways, depending on what's going on. So you can't say, I don't have any fears. So I have to say, well, in what area of life? What do you mean? So you might not have a fear in one area, but in another area, you're petrified, terrified, right? So we have to be very careful that we understand the whole person. We have to understand. I've seen individuals, when a scenario looks anything like something that hurt them before, that wall of fear begins to come up. When something reminds them of a place they've been before, that wall of fear comes up. So we have to understand how we're wired in that way. Another key area is mediocrity. That area of our life that we just refuse to do our best. We're willing to settle. We're willing to do enough to just get by. I call it the JGBs. We have to understand when we're just getting by. Mediocre is something that hinders all of us. It limits us from what we can truly do and what we can truly become. All right, now, these are the villains. But let's talk about some heroes. We got to overcome these villains here. Enough about them. Let's talk about these 4 heroes. Now, this is what we use to combat that. So I want you to be aware of these. I want you to get a good look at this. These are 4 heroes that can stop that fist that keeps breaking down our wall. It can stop those thoughts that come back from bad experiences we've had. It can stop that childhood experience that is hard to let go of. There's something that we can tap into. There's 4 heroes that aren't afraid of those villains. So we need self-awareness. We've got to be willing to become more aware of what has happened, how we think, what has shaped us. And so that awareness creates a liberty, it creates a freedom. Then we have to understand self-empowerment, being able to generate our own power. When there's nothing left, when there's nothing to rely on, when there's no one to go to, you got to be able to generate that power from the inside. So we have to learn how to do that. Then we have to understand courage. The ability to overcome fear, the ability to actually stand up to something that is a threat to you. And it can simply be in your own mind. It doesn't have to be someone in front of you, threatening your physical safety, but it can be a courage to face the things that are inside. And then last but not least, we have to also have excellence. Excellence is the ability to exceed the expectation. This is what we always want to be striving for. I love when Dr. King said, if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, go on out and sweep streets like Beethoven composed music, like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets like all of these great philosophers begin to write their thoughts on paper. Sweep streets so well that the living, the dead, or the unborn couldn't sweep streets any better. In fact, if you died, they'll say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. He went on to say, if you can't be a pine on the top of the hill, let's be a shrub in the valley, but be the best little shrub on the side of the reel. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If If you can't be the sun, be a star. For it's not by size that you win or you fail. Be the best at whatever you are. And so I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there real quick. We talking about excellence. I had to throw a little Dr. King in there on you. But listen, we got to be excellent. We got to exceed the expectation. We can't just do what everyone expects us to do. We got to do more than that as moms, as fathers, as husbands, as wives, as girlfriends, as boyfriends, as brothers, as sisters, as people. We got to be willing to do that. And you've got to ask yourself, can you reach inside and do that? These are the heroes that will help us.